Starting with a prayer is appropriate for any talk given to an interfaith community on any topic. However, this prayer and poem by Rabbi Hirsch starts and focuses upon the transcendent importance of giving and receiving, which, as you will see, is a central idea of this webinar. Please keep that in mind. One glorious chain of love, of giving and receiving, unites all living things. All things exist in continuous reciprocal activity. One for all for one. None has power or means for itself. Each receives only in order to give and gives in order to receive, and finds therein the fulfillment of the purpose of its existence. Love, say the sages, love that supports and is supported in turn, that is the character of the universe. Customer lowered electricity price lowers greenhouse gas emissions while financially benefiting all ratepayers is the title of this webinar and talk. Presented to the Greater New Orleans Interfaith Climate Committee by ProRate Energy on August 12, 2020. I'm CLEP's inventor and leader of the ProRate Energy team, which will soon become a Louisiana nonprofit corporation en route to IRS 501c3 status. We advocate customer lowered electricity price because it helps solve a host of problems, but most important is lowering greenhouse gas emissions by paying people to do what is best for their own pockets. That will be explained in this webinar. Richard Troy is a simulation software designer who created the CLEP dashboard. We were lucky to land someone with his qualifications and experience. In 1995, he led a 43-person team at UC Berkeley to computationally merge 5 earth sciences to better understand how global climate change was driven by global warming. It resulted in the world's first successful computing grid, a precursor of cloud technology. NASA then offered to commercialize his research, allowing him to found Science Tools Corporation, where he today serves as chief scientist. A moment to describe who I am and what's going on. I have a doctorate in mathematics, which I earned about 40 years ago. And not long after that, I got deeply involved in building science and how to save money in buildings. And I learned a lot about energy efficiency, which was commonly thought to be the only real way to do it. And more recently, most people recognize renewable energy, but there's actually energy storage, which you will see in this discussion is actually more valuable to save money than the other two. And to get that to work, we need a rate structure that supports it. So the rate structure we're talking about is CLEP, and I'm trying to explain that if we use these 3 things together, we can solve this problem. So this is a really interesting slide. You may have heard of this guy's name, Albert Einstein. And there's a common problem of researchers and scientists and creative people. You know what the problem is, but you don't know how to solve it. And he pointed out this comment. If I had an hour to solve a problem and my life's dependent on it, I would spend the first 55 minutes figuring out which question to ask. So I did that in this case. And after thinking about it for 35 years, I realized that to solve the problem, I have to engage the marketplace to solve climate change. So in order to do that, I had to think of an electricity rate design that would cause people to buy electricity when it's cheaper and make investments in their home. And this would automatically, and outside of their understanding, lower their carbon footprint. And that's what CLEP does. And that's what I'm excited to explain to you today. So what is this marketplace where we can give and receive? Remember, that's the phrase used by Rabbi Hirsch's prayer. And we're going to do a lot of giving and receiving in this and make money and save the climate all at the same time. So MISO means Mid-Continental Independent System Operator, and it's our wholesale electricity marketplace. MISO's website, which is linked at the bottom, but we're not going to go to it because it's not going to work too well in Zoom, but you can do this on your own later, is a graph which shows thousands of nodes. Each node shows the time-dependent and location-dependent price. And you can recognize higher prices because the color is redder, lower prices bluer, and even some purple places where the price is negative. So here is a snapshot from that website. And you'll notice that this slide and the one paired with it are the ones called when you sell and when you receive. When you give and when you receive, right? Give, receive, like the theme of the rabbi's poem. So what are we going to do? We want to sell when the price is high. In the lower right-hand corner of the screen, right here where it says Louisiana Hub, that says that the wholesale price in megawatt hours is over $20. So if you divide by 1,000, that's like 2 cents per kilowatt hour. So you might think that price is high, low, but it's actually high because in the next slide, I'm going to show you the same price goes down to less than 1/10. So this is a good time to sell electricity. This particular snapshot was taken on October the 18th at 7 p.m. A similar time, a few days later, but an earlier time in the day, I took this snapshot. And you'll notice that the Louisiana hub price is $1.75 per megawatt hour, which is 0.175 cents per kilowatt hour, which is way cheaper, less than 1/20th the price of electricity that was available in the evening, probably of the day before. So that's when you buy. So if you were to buy and sell, you'd make a fortune buying and selling with electricity just in doing that. But you can't do with our current case. And so what we're saying, somebody's audio is on, it's distracting. Please turn it off. So notice in this picture, again, somebody's audio is on. Please turn it off, it's distracting. Notice that. Okay, so notice that there are places where it's purple, where the prices are negative. I told you. There are places where it's deep blue, where the prices are very, very low. Over here, under 1 cent a kilowatt hour. And over here, there are some places where the prices are high. But nevertheless, that's what happens on the MISO map. And this is the giving and receiving place that we can make money and save the planet. Why is that? Because the fuel mix changes also. Here is a fuel mix snapshot from the same website where we see that wind is around 9% of the total amount of electricity in the grid. That means this is cleaner electricity than wind. Of course, there's a smaller percentage of wind. Actually, this morning I took this screenshot, and you can see that wind over here is over 12% of the electricity on the grid. So the amount of cleanness of that grid is time dependent. And it's not a coincidence that when the price is lower, the wind percentage is higher. So when we buy it cheaper just to make money, we buy it cleaner. And if we sell it back cleaner than when we got it, we've created a negative impact on the grid. So it's a win-win-win. So what is this talk going to do? What this talk is going to do is go through these 3 items. What do you want the customer to do, be a CLEP customer? What do you want the utility to do? What happens if all that happens? I'm going to explain that quickly. So I'm not sure what time it is and how am I doing. I'll use 10 minutes. We're doing great. Okay. So what do you want the CLEP customer to do? So it's 3 things, A, B, C, and A has 3 parts. First, learn how to buy electricity. She would call our customer female. She will learn how to lower her electric bill primarily by changing when she buys and sells. And this will cause no degradation in lifestyle, can create unlimited cash flows, even making your bills negative, and improve reliability, comfort, health, safety, lower energy use, and even a negative environmental footprint. All this can happen, but the customer only pays attention to their own electric bill, and indirectly and by accident, without concern, improves the Earth's biosphere. What a wonderful system. And that's what CLEP is. But in the second step, we say, well, how do you get there? Well, in order to be a CLEP customer, you have to sign up. And we envision the CLEP will roll out with the first year risk-free. But during that time, you will have an opportunity to do 3 things that will lower your electric bill by more than $900 a year by only investing $50. Is that a good deal? Can you sell that to people? So I just have to make my phone quiet. All right. So anyway, how is that we're going to do that? I'm going to show you the dishwasher, the water heater, and the community solar example in the next 3 slides. And by the way, the meters on the left were the old style meter and the new style smart meter. We're going to be using smart meters from now on. So here's the dishwasher example. In the dishwasher example, we want you to run your dishwasher not like you normally do, maybe anytime or in the afternoon, to 2 o'clock in the morning. And that alone will save you around $50 a year. If we do the water heater example, which again is a standard electric water heater, and if you use it only in the morning to heat water at night, you have to overheat the water heater, which uses more kilowatt hours, so you can't pay for it with an energy efficiency retrofit because you didn't save kilowatt hours. However, with CLEP, you can make or earn around $185 net of other expenses, and therefore pay for the $50 investment for this to happen in less than a year. And the last one, this is a very interesting one. It's worth spending a little more time on. This is community solar. You may not have heard of it. What it means is instead of having electricity panels on your roof, you have it in some field, not far from downtown, but in that field, we share parts of the solar farm. Depicted here, the Schwartz family and the Rodriguez family and Jones family all own part of the solar farm. But in our model, we rent part of the solar farm. You may later on ask me why rent instead of own. That goes into the nitty-gritty I don't want to talk about now. But I do want to explain these 2 sentences. So one sentence, peak power of solar electricity is more value than its energy. First of all, what is peak power? Peak power is the time of the day or the time of the year when the utility is most stressed to produce power to serve its customers. And so when you provide power to the grid or avoid providing power to the grid, that is more valuable to the utility because it avoids expensive things like what we did 2 years ago and build this stupid peaking plant. If we can produce peaking power at the time of peak power, the solar electricity is more valuable. In fact, it's more valuable than the energy produces. And that's in juxtaposition to the next sentence. We actually did a calculation with our dashboard and found that CLEP provides 13% more income to a rooftop solar than if they use net energy metering, which you might remember only values the amount of energy produced and not the power. So I think with that background, it'll lead you better into understanding what's going on. By the way, if you have a question, it's okay to ask it. So let's go on. So the second part of what you do, a third part of what you do as a CLEP customer is you consider making deeper investments after the first year. And we talk about the heat pump water heater, the ice making air conditioner, the whole home battery, and the electric vehicle. Let's see what in fact happens when you do these. But it's important to look at the last sentence. With these investments, you can change your $1,400 a year bill to income of the same amount in the opposite direction, all without government subsidies. So let's look at the heat pump water heater. I imagine most of you have never seen a heat pump water heater or imagine what it is. It just has an air conditioner on the top and a tank on the bottom. And this is exactly the only retrofit that saves more kilowatt hours enough to pay for itself. It's the only one that is quote unquote an energy efficiency retrofit. But the income is greater with CLEP. And so it's important. And it's also important to note that you don't have to add a timer to it because it already has its built-in electronics, so it can be remotely controlled. Another example is the ice making air conditioner. It's a really wonderful invention. It makes ice at night, allows you to cool a home for ice that you stored the night before. And it's not an energy efficiency retrofit because it doesn't save enough kilowatt hours to support its first investment. But with CLEP, the income is sufficient and allows you to shift all your demand outside of peak hours and earn a lot of money with CLEP. So you can see the number on the right of how much money is estimated that you earn from that. It's more than pays for itself in less than 5 years. The whole home battery is just a battery, just like the battery in your cell phone, except think of it as 1,000 batteries in your cell phone, sitting in this nice little case in your living room. That's what the Sonnen battery shows up in this picture. Unfortunately, it costs about $10,000, and with the $700 a year income from CLEP, it doesn't pay for it fast enough. That's what I mean by this is too slow. We'll go into how we finance it anyway in the CLEP dashboard discussion. The simulator of CLEP we'll talk about at the end, which will be presented by Richard. So The picture of the car there looks exactly like my car. It could be a picture of my car because it's exactly that car. And it's blue and everything. So electric vehicle raises your bill by as much as $500 a year and only generates about $75 of income. All that comes from buying electricity when it's cheaper at night. Now you could use your battery of your car, like the whole home battery, and generate an extra $600 of income. But that would mean that you couldn't use your car in the afternoon. So we didn't model it that way. Anyway, we talked about these incomes, which is what we promised we would do. And the last thing that you want to do as a CLEP customer is associate with an aggregator. An aggregator is the company that teams up or contracts with hundreds to thousands of customers and changes when the buy and sale things occur. As we pointed out, it's very timely. You sell it one time, it's much more advantageous than another. Similarly, when you buy. The aggregator pays attention to those market conditions in the MISO market and enhances your income by as much as 25%. You pay them 10%, everybody comes out ahead. An example of that is the conjugal company in this picture. So this is the summary of what you just learned about what you want the customer to do. Water heaters, ice making air conditioners, windmills, solar plants, electric vehicles, etc. So what do you want the utility to do? Well, the first thing we want them to do is nothing. Keep charge all customers what they currently charge their time independent electric rates, likely to be near 12 cents a kilowatt hour. But we also want them to pay them for costs avoidable. So suppose a customer does something to lower the wholesale price. It actually lowers the cost to everyone. But if he raises the wholesale price, he actually raises the cost to everyone. So what we want to do is track what actually happens. If a customer causes a rise in wholesale price, we charge him 100% of that change. If a customer causes a drop in the wholesale price, we pay them 90% of their savings. The same thing happens associated with peak power. That's a longer explanation, but it's in the definition of CLEP. So what do we do with that 5%? We give it to the utility. And that utility uses it to pay its administrative costs, but that should be more than enough. And the residual is left to lower the price of electricity for all customers, which gets back to the title of the talk. We said all ratepayers see lower bills, benefit from this, because some of that 5% lowers the price of electricity for everyone. So what's the result? What happens? What would be the advantage of both parties that are suggested? Well, the utility would get a little bit more profit, which they love to get, certainly for something they didn't do anything to support or cause to happen. Our investments out of their pocket. Why would they complain about that? Secondly, customers get roughly double the income they all would have gotten for the things they want to do anyway. Invest in energy efficient equipment, rooftop solar, and they should now for the first time be able to finance whole home batteries. But also we want to improve the marketplace. We want to spur investments in market transforming technologies, like ice making air conditioners, ground coupled swimming pools. And I want to say, even including other technologies I haven't thought of, because once you create a market, people will jump into it. And what's the result? This will engage the marketplace to greatly slow down the causes of global warming. And we're just about now to go into the demo. Does anybody have a question? I'm going at the speed I think to, so we're out of time, but we'll have plenty of time at the end. So now we're going to go into the demo. And Richard, would you please share your screen so you can do the demo?
Sure. Just a little bit of what we're looking at here. This is a set of software that models the mathematics of CLEP with real world data. And I have a scientific background and used my earth science modeling skills to help create this. And there's a lot here and we just don't have time for all of it. So forgive that I don't go through everything, but the left hand is like basic economics. And then this section, the lower section, energy use here, we see dishwasher, water heater, air conditioning. These numbers will be interesting as we watch the main panel changing. Here we have 0 hour, that's basically midnight. And then through the day, through the 24 hours of the day from 0 to 23. And the vertical bars are measured on this portion of it. It's vertical bars representing hourly demand in kilowatts. And just because of the coincidence that it's in hours, it also happens to work for power as well as demand. So it's kilowatt and kilowatt hours. It's kind of just a fluky thing about how that works, but it's convenient for us. And then on the right, we talk about some miscellaneous things that we don't need to get too deeply into, but you can see energy pricing like this 11 cents. That's what E&O charges you guys right now. So, and this specifically is being driven by 2018 data specifically for New Orleans, and we're looking at August 20th. And we can change the day, for example, a few days later, and you see the colors change. The red means it's really expensive stuff. So, but there are also days where it's cheap. Like when it's green here in this 2, that means it's actually below 2 cents at that moment in time. Because the software has to round it off. The mathematics behind it are a little more accurate than what we're seeing on the screen. Anyway, now to get into what we're doing, along the bottom, we can see each of the various choices that we've modeled: dishwasher, heat pump, water heater, ice making, AC, and so forth. Those will be cumulatively collected along the bottom. So, excuse me, Myron wants me to kind of follow his presentation in terms of how I'm showing this to you. So right now we have the standard dishwasher being shown, and the dishwasher is running at 4 in the afternoon for 1 kilowatt hour worth of use. And we see that over on the left today, dishwasher 1, annual 365 as its contribution to the use. But if we just change when that happens, watch what happens to this number up here in the left in red. If we just change it, and because 2 a.m. looks to be the perfect hour to run it, so we'll select 2 and say do that. And we saw our number drop, you know, to 103. Look at our return, $47.50 is returned to us just by changing when we run the dishwasher. That's it. No money out of pocket here. All we've done is just change our behavior a little bit. The next thing that we're going to look at is the water heater, and we can see that as described in the talk, it's being run at, you know, a total of 10 kilowatt hours throughout the day at, you know, 2 in the morning, 10 in the morning. You know, presumably you get up, you take a shower, whatever, you're using some hot water, and it regenerates around 10 a.m. for a little while, and then you've got your evening usage. So this pattern is just a representative example. It's fairly reasonably typical. But if we change that, as Myron said, we need to overheat the water. So our usage will go from 10, and what we've modeled here is it'll go to 11 as 5.5 twice, where we have to overheat it so that it can remain hot throughout the rest of the day. And so we're actually using more energy, but because our time of use changed, we've actually now started to save $95 a year. We're basically making money, and all we've done is change the time at which we're doing what we're doing. That's it. We haven't really done much at all. A timer on your water heater may or may not cost you anything. I think, you know, it's pretty typical that you might pay a little bit of money to invest in it, which is represented here as a $50 investment to basically have a timed water heater. That's a pretty modest investment for the return that you get. And you can see that it pays for itself in just over half a year, about 2/3 of a year. So now if we then move on, Myron's next example was community solar. If we can just say, let's do that, then we have a representative example of doing this. And we can see that our demand during the critical hours has dropped substantially because the community solar here has given us what is referred to as negative demand. These negative numbers are taking away from the totals of our other load. So, by the way, this load here the first row is hours. This next row is the load, and that is the cumulative of the values below, which, for example, at 2 a.m., we've got a total of a background of a 0.5 kilowatt. That's just to, you know, run your clocks and whatever. And then you've got your dishwashers. So there's your 1.5 and so forth throughout the day. Right. So by adding community solar, we've done an awful lot here. We actually have a savings, an annual savings, if we look in the upper left corner, of $1,260. And we can look down at the bottom and see the combined effect of all of these retrofits. This is 3. You've got community solar, timed water heater, and the dishwasher with timer, collectively showing that you know, we're making money here. We're doing fine. We are paying $420 a year to rent the solar panels, but the energy that it's giving back to us is coming at a critical time period when these little vertical orange bars, what these represent are that critical peak energy period that the utility desperately does not want to be selling you power at, because it's expensive power. It's coming when everybody has their air conditioning running. We're talking about August 20th here, and it's expensive. And I'll just switch to, this happens to be a fairly inexpensive day. If we look to the 22nd, oh my God, the price, look at the prices. We jump from, at 11 a.m., it's 5.7 cents per kilowatt hour. It jumps to 22.9, 36.2, then 63.5 cents. And here it breaks $1.20, and it's such a big number that, so that's $1.20 plus per kilowatt hour at that hour of the day. We do not want to be buying electricity at that hour. And by having community solar and these other techniques to reduce demand at that period, that is where a substantial part of the income comes from, and why it's also extremely helpful for reducing carbon dioxide emissions. And then you'll notice we've got a little section, if you follow to the left of the horizontal bar, we have atmospheric CO2 avoided. This is an estimate. It's around 9,000 pounds in this configuration at this moment. This month, we would have saved around 780 pounds of carbon dioxide that we didn't add to the atmosphere that we would have otherwise. Now, these are estimates, of course, and we could get into that in the question and answer later if y'all wish. So now, moving on, if we do a little bit more, so we've done our dishwasher, we've got our water heater, but we could have a heat pump instead of just a timer. So if we're going to do that, it shifts still further, and our benefits change a little bit. And now we're making $254 a year. We've invested about $300. Well, there's rebates and such involved in this. So, you know, Myron can answer a lot of your questions about that later. And then, so we've also got ice making air conditioner that we can add that would help. And boom, wow, now during this critical period where people are paying $1.20 plus per kilowatt, well, the utility's paying it with the fixed rate, but I'm saying that is the true cost of that energy at on this particular day in New Orleans at 3 in the afternoon. That was the average price for that entire hour. And now, where are we? We have wiped out all of the critical period. We are negative during exactly the period of the day when the grid most is in need, and that's why the price is so high. So we are helping dramatically with our configuration that we've done, and we're making around $940 a year on this. So we're doing good. So there's a little bit more here. We can add a battery, a whole home battery, and when we do that, we see that we're charging the battery in the middle of the night when the energy price is low and the energy is greener, and we're selling it back to the grid during the peak period that is most important to the planet, to the utilities, and to our neighbors. And so we are really helping now. Our annual profit goes up to $1,639. Yes, it'll take us a while to pay back for our $10,000 battery, but we can pay it off with this strategy. You can't do that with the normal scenario. So then finally, if we have an electric vehicle, as Myron was saying earlier, yes, you're basically buying electricity as a fuel, and that costs you and puts a little more demand. But because you're buying in the middle of the night with CLEP, you actually have additional savings. So, and that savings in this scenario actually adds up and makes profit. So there you have it. That's my quick rundown, and I'm open to questions. Yeah, that's fine. Sure, I'll pause and just.
Let me check. You did a great job, Richard. Let me take over. I just did. And I want to remind you, I only have 2 slides to go. So the whole story is available at my website that you just saw. And you'll also find a copy of the complete evidentiary record of CLEP's inclusion in the 2018 E&O rate case. And this is critically important to you. And it's a segue to the next slide. We're talking about something going on in New Orleans right now that your influence can drastically affect what happens in New Orleans and become the tipping point or the top of the avalanche, start up this snowball going downhill, if we can get it to happen here. So what is our ask? So our group, the ProRate Energy or CLEP team, needs your support. We need the full support. The city council has already said that they need something like this. They need to pay for the $80 million investment in smart meters and make it cost effective. They need to honor the city mayors and the council's pledge for the Paris Accord. They need more self-reliant and safe homes and more employment. CLEP can help us realize these goals. We also want to enhance Biden's climate action plan because it has a poor goal, it takes too long, and it's expensive. On the other hand, CLEP is a better goal, can get there faster and much cheaper. How to get there? We think you are a cornerstone of local influence. Please vote to endorse our efforts. We can use that to reach out to the city council and move forward with this. So do we have any questions? And you certainly may ask me or Richard. I hope I haven't bulldozed you with this stuff, but we still have over 20 minutes for questions. So please ask.
Can you bring down the PowerPoint, Myron?
I think I did it, right?
Yes, you did.
Good work.
Okay. Yes, Parvez, please ask.
Yeah, Myron, I have a little quick question. I think, well, I understand that the Entergy has been in the past year or so, I guess, been going around and replacing the meters with what they call smart meters. Are they the same thing that you're talking about? Different?
Yes, that was in one of the slides, yes. And you need smart meters or some similar technology to do CLEP. And I've known that they were doing this since 2015 and introduced CLEP in 2016 to the city council, partly to head off the building of the speaking plant. And a lot of people purposely stopped it because they knew it was a stronger argument and it didn't have any legs. But now we have a new council who care about this, and I think we can make this happen, but it takes community support.
Myron, this is Pete. How does this play into the current debate between the Alliance for Affordable Energy and the City Council advisors over what should be in the resilient portfolio standard? And to what degree do you believe the resilient portfolio standard should be enhanced?
Well, I have to tell you that I think processes of the type you're talking about, whether the resilience portfolio standard or a similar one, which is called integrated resource planning, is ill-advised. The reason why we do it is because we do not have a marketplace for smart choices. Somebody has their speaker on and we hear the background noise. What happened is, if we allow people to make choices, I'll give you an example. If we had CLEP, I could pick up the phone and get a guy in Maine to run down here and spend $25 million in building us a community solar plant. And ratepayers wouldn't have to put a penny down. And the customer and that person who built it would know what his income is, and we could help the poor people, and we wouldn't need a plan. What's happening is, by doing planning, we have forced us to pay these attorneys $600 an hour to argue over per piece of paper that they send us. And we have to argue of it. The truth is, the marketplace solves these problems better. But in order for us to trust the marketplace, We need the marketplace working in a synergistic way to our goals. We want low price electricity to cause low green electricity. Another thing that you may not know is that when the utility builds a solar plant, they have to be paid 16% return on investments, federal law. Whereas they only get 9% return on investment as a result of the recent rate case. So the utility is happy to build solar plants. We don't want them to build solar plants, like we don't want them to build peaking plants. We don't want to build anything. We want them just to be the traffic guards. They maintain the grid. They pay people for the investments they make to lower the cost of everyone else. And this automatically generates a feedback loop that lowers our carbon footprint. So the bottom line to your question is, I think it's a waste of time and money, just like integrated resource planning. In fact, when CLEP was invented, it was in the middle of the 2015 integrated resource planning process. And when I invented it, I was completely sure that what I was doing was far cheaper and faster than what they were doing. And I don't know if you know, the 2015 integrated resource planning process lasted 2.5 years and resulted in 0 decisions. And they spent $6 or $10 million running that plant. The same kind of thing will happen with this resource plan. It'll spend less money and it'll generate a dubious result. That's
So, am I to understand that this New Orleans plant in the east would simply not even be worth considering in your view?
If CLEP had been adopted in 2016, it would have been immediately obvious that the New Orleans power station was completely irrelevant, that we could get there faster and cheaper. And we would have known that 2 years before the thing was even considered. And there's plenty of evidence that the advisors to the city, who we pay $6 to $7 million a year, were in cahoots and made a backroom deal with the utility to give them their peaking plant. And that's the reason why they killed CLEP in 2016. And I can show you the chapter and verse on that, using a religious example terminology. Okay. So, you know, the truth is we do not want the utility, and to much extent the utility regulator, to make our energy decisions. The utility is seldom our ally. The regulator can't pay attention, and the solution has to be done at the lowest level, at the consumer level, to be most cost effective and rapid. People don't realize for the utility and its regulator to make a decision in a way that's fair and reasonable for the consumer, it takes 3 years. Where a person changing a light bulb takes 5 minutes. Okay.
I'd like to make an observation, please.
Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
As all of you consider all of this and discuss it amongst the people that you know and so forth, I can easily imagine people asking themselves the question, well, where does all this CLEP income and profit come from? And there's a simple fundamental answer to that I want you to keep in mind and remember. Basically what we're doing here is giving you direct access to the wholesale market, plus a little cut, 5% taken off of that, you know, for overhead and so forth, and reduce other people's bills as well. But by giving you direct access to that wholesale market is what drives the finances behind all of this. So that's how there can be no subsidies and so forth. And Myron didn't get into the mathematics of this much at all, but something that is kind of a little hidden behind the scenes here, because we didn't get into those formulas, is that E&O will still get their original base bill. I think it would be nice, Myron, if you spoke a little bit to that, because you know, I think it's helpful that people understand that, you know, E&O really should be delighted at adopting CLEP, and yet they want to kill it.
Well, really what it has to do with the utility for the last 5 years has been focused on building a $200 million peaking plant, because they live in the old world where the only way they can make money is to spend more money. So they spend $200 million and get 10% return on investment, then they make $10 million a year. And of course, if they say they're going to spend $200 million, they actually spend $400 million. So they get $40 million a year. And that's what they're trying to do, because that's the way they've always made money. and they don't really give about anything else. However, the utility regulator's job is not to guarantee the income for the utility. It's to solve the problem of reliable electricity, which actually, by the way, is another kind of mistake. Reliability begins at home. Anyone who lived through Katrina knows that the government isn't going to protect you from hurricanes or floods or electric outages. You need to do as much of that on your own. And CLEP empowers.
You know, you bring up a fantastic point that we overlooked in our talks today, which is the reliability of the grid. Can you speak for a moment or two about how the batteries and so forth, that
Yeah,
if
well,
they were
let
adopted?
me just tell you that if you ask the people who really think about this many hours a day, the only way we can have 100% renewable energy future is to have almost as many batteries as we have buildings. And these batteries need to be on the order of 10 kilowatt hours, which is like 1,000 times the battery power of one cell phone. That sounds like a lot, but that's all that's in my car. My car literally has 1,000 little batteries like that. And if every home had 1,000 little batteries like that, there would be no peaking problems. There would be no problems of renewable energy makes electricity it doesn't need. There would be no reliability problems. I wouldn't say no, because you still have things that happen. But you wouldn't have to worry about stocking up for electricity for a hurricane or a power outage. Or we currently experience in New Orleans 2,000 power outages a year, which cause tens of millions of dollars of economic damage, of lost wages and so forth. All that would disappear. And we would be getting ourselves ready for a renewable energy future. And there's no rate structure besides CLEP that pays for batteries. So just that alone is the rationale sufficient for a CLEP. Does that answer your question, Richard? Is what you're looking for?
Yeah, well, I already know this stuff. I was more prompting you to talk about it because it's important. I'd like to add here, though, I've done some significant research into batteries. This was prompted by an article that Myron showed us last spring, a year ago. And it turns out that there are some brand new battery technologies coming along that vastly outperform what we modeled and what Myron was talking about and showing you. There are new battery designs that use inert materials like silica, as in sand, and also sodium in a form similar to salt. And you can get a battery with twice the energy density storage at half the price of lithium ion, which is the technology that's in your car, are now on the market. And we did not model that. And if we did, we put that in here, the results would be even more fantastic.
And I want to say there's a reason why we did it. First of all, every time you turn around, there's going to be another technology. And if one of the big problems with utility regulators are they have to put all the cards on the table and have an argument for 3 years, literally, or it's considered not fair. And by that time, most of the technologies they're talking about are obsolete. So I didn't decide to make this CLEP talk about the latest technology on purpose, because I know anything that comes out is better than that. If I can make the numbers work with the stuff that was around in 2016, I should have completed the argument. Sure, it can work faster and better, but we want things to work faster and better and faster and better. We want this to be a feedback loop that solves the problem. Just think about it in your own life. When you grew up, there were telephones, now there are cell phones. When you grew up, there were typewriters, and then there were electric typewriters, and then there are computers, and then we have the internet. These things keep changing, and they're going to keep changing. And the speed at which they change is way faster than any utility regulator or utility can decide in a 3-year process to make a decision on. That's the world we live in. CLEP empowers it. The old utility model stifles it.
Sayed, did you have your hand up? You're on mute. I guess not. Sorry, Richard, go ahead.
I'd like to ask y'all a question. What do y'all think? I mean, you've heard us both speaking about this. You've heard some additional discussion other than our presentation. We'd love to hear what you folks think and what you think are important about this subject.
Reverend Christina has her hand up.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, a couple questions. One is back in the 70s where the rates changed and you could regulate what you used when so that you could get cheaper rates. Seemed to work really well. Somehow that went by the wayside. But with solar, it seems counterintuitive that I want to run things at nighttime when my solar is producing what's needed for the household during the daytime. Since the sell back to the utilities, at least in my area, is exceedingly low. So that's one question. And the other question I have is something that, Richard, that you just brought up, of some of these different transitional and new technologies. It does not seem that we are producing them in the Louisiana area. And it seems like that could be another transition of business and industry that could also take us away from the petrochemical rut that we're in.
Yeah, I think it's a really great question, Christina. And I know Richard would much prefer to answer the second one, so I'm gonna let him deal with that. But the first question, it turns out if you understood CLEP, and before you spent the $10,000 to $20,000 or $30,000 to put solar panels on your roof, if you understood CLEP, you would realize it wasn't the best place to put your money. If CLEP had been around and been smarter to buy batteries, because with batteries, less dollars invested, you'd get greener electricity by buying it from the grid and selling it back. However, your solar panels do contribute. They're just not as cost effective as batteries. So in your case, where you see yourself as an island from the grid, and you can make electricity and use it for your own needs, you probably don't realize that with CLEP, it would be more advantageous for you and the grid if you sold your electricity that you generated at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, instead of storing it on the grid for later use on the same day or some subsequent day. We actually calculated that CLEP pays 13% higher than net metering does. So if you did a real calculation, your solar panels, whether or not they're on your roof or on a community solar farm, generate more income. So people should not island. They should share, which is what we started off in the prayer. We should share, we should give and receive. When we do that, we lower our environmental footprint. So that's perhaps an enigma to you now, but I'm trying to get you to understand it. But the second question you asked about, how do we transition to a cleaner future? I know Richard really wants to talk about it. And if you leave something I'd said, I'll be happy to chime in. Go ahead, Richard.
Right. I share your interest in helping revitalize the industry in Louisiana into something other than just more pollution and profits for a few. It's a challenge to figure out exactly how to do this. I'm encouraged by some of the work that Australia has been doing. And I would encourage you to use your internet search capabilities to seek out what they're doing in, new battery design and so forth. And I think that we could be producing in Louisiana some of these technologies, but there's something else that's related to all of this that is perhaps the subject of another talk. I think, Liz, I seem to remember your face in a talk that I joined several weeks back, a month ago, where I talked about these a wonderful article that I read in the National Academy of Engineering talking about the need for carbon storage. And it turns out that the petrochemical industry of southern Louisiana is ideally suited for helping us capture and store carbon from the atmosphere into the ground, but that's a topic for another day.
I'd like to also add that the ice making air conditioner, which we showed you had an incredibly high impact on in the bill. Of everything, it had the biggest impact on the bill. It cost over $3,000 after rebate in Southern California. And that company went out of business because there was no CLEP rate structure to support the invention. It's like the cart before the horse. You can't have the cart without the horse. And if you don't have a horse, you can't think of a cart. What happened is they invented a cart, but there was no horse to pull it. CLEP is the horse that pulls the ice making air conditioning industry. If we had CLEP, we could have a manufacturing plant for ice making industry here. We could build it here. If we had CLEP, they'd build more wind farms wherever you can make wind, whether it's Iowa or Texas. Yeah.
Myron, We're running out of time, and Liz has a question.
Yeah, well, actually, there's two questions. Robert, did you have one also?
I do a really quick
Robert,
one.
then Liz.
Okay.
While waiting for the horse from the city council, would there be any advantage to having solar panels, say in the backyard, that would feed into a house battery so that we could generate and store our own energy?
Okay, the answer is the most cost-effective battery around is the electric grid. Okay, the trouble
Right.
is they're giving it back to you at retail as opposed to valuing it for its power effect, which is more than retail. So don't buy the battery first, and don't buy the solar panel first. What you buy first is maximal energy efficiency, and then the battery, and then the solar panel. And when
But
you
I'm
buy the
thinking of
solar
the fact
panel,
that there may not be a grid. What happens when the power?
I'm just trying to
outage?
tell you, in the order of purchasing, the first thing you do is you reset your dishwasher and just reset your water heater. And then you buy into a community solar farm, because a community solar farm has 1/3 the cost of installation in dollars per watt. And it empowers everybody to have rooftop solar. You may not realize only 10% of people in New Orleans can have rooftop solar for a variety of reasons. So community solar is the most universal response to solving the problem. We told you.
But I think I think Robert is really looking for a reliability comment there, yes?
I am really, yes, exactly.
Okay,
Thank
well,
you.
there's a reliability aspect, and that's what the batteries do. And for that, if that's what you value, then you need the batteries. Hope I get to answer Liz's question.
Thank you.
Yep. Liz.
Thanks a lot. A couple of things. I just wanted to comment that yes, when the energy, in regards to the energy plan in New Orleans East, that the people, the community groups and the environmentalists who were working against it did come out heavily against it, because they said that a lot of these issues could be solved if you repaired the grid that was in and around New Orleans, that you didn't need this huge power plant to solve this problem. Basically, you could do it through repairs. And the second thing is, yeah, sort of what Robert was talking about, the does it have to be mutually exclusive? Can you not have net metering and have CLEP? I understand that you're talking about it from a money standpoint. And then the other question I have is about this air conditioner. So tell me it's something that's already been produced, but it's not financially feasible right now because of the lack of demand. Is that it?
Okay, let me answer your questions. I hope I remember them all. So the first thing is about the power plant. Yes, it has a big pollution problem. The pollution problem was never going to kill or save that plant because everyone else is caring about money. That's the reason why CLEP is about money, not about pollution, even though I care more about pollution than money. You have to win the argument where people are paying attention, and everybody pays attention to money. Unfortunately, we're a small minority who care about the environment. We have to win based on money, otherwise we can't win. Second issue is, well, I'm not sure I remember them all, but the issue about, do you have to have one or the other? Namely, do you have to have panels or batteries, or do you have to have net metering or CLEP? And the answer is, whatever economic system you have helps to drive the economic decision. It turns out CLEP is superior economically to net metering. Everyone who has rooftop solar will get more income by around 13% in New Orleans because they switch to CLEP. And as you might know, 90% of Louisiana doesn't have net metering because the Public Service Commission decided it was not fair. It's in fact not true. It's a substitute in the opposite direction. So if CLEP comes in, we not only have rooftop solar in New Orleans, but we have it throughout Louisiana. So the pricing method drives the conclusion. And if we do it the other way around, we're never going to get there. Okay? We have to think about it from the point of how are we going to get people to do the right thing? Pay them to do the right thing, and they will do the right thing. Okay? And as long as the payment system is appropriately tied to an environmental consequence, that is that's not untoward and doesn't consider the real effects. CLEP does it. Did I answer all your questions, Liz, or did I leave one out?
That's good for today.
Okay, well, let me just remind you what the ask is. We need someone asked, Robert says, is the city council the next stop? The city council has the ability to implement CLEP. And they even have a process that was on track to have a docket on it in the early spring, but COVID just derailed that. We know the person to talk to. His name is Andrew Gizola, the chief of staff for Elena Moreno. He's the guy who wants to see the community support coming for CLEP. If he gets it, that docket will happen sooner and more successfully give us the pilot. If we get the pilot, we can sell CLEP all over the world. And if we do, we can have billions of people doing in their own action much more powerful economic things to solve the climate problem.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I know it's 10 o'clock. Myron, I just wanted to ask one thing. How much do these air conditioners cost?
Okay, so the answer to that is, I actually spoke to the CEO of the company, and he says they cost around $7,000 a piece, which is almost twice as much as the similar train or carrier unit. But that's only because their company is small and they don't have mass assembly lines. If they were building on even half as many of these units as train and carrier did, they would get down to around $3,000. That's why they're subsidized down to $3,000 by Southern California Edison. But since Southern California Edison never had a rate structure to support it, that company went out of business. Okay?
Okay. It's 10 o'clock. Any more questions?
Hope you guys can follow through on this. We're counting on you. Thank you very much.
We very much appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and we welcome any engagement y'all may have with us. And keep in mind, we also have a website. You know, this CLEP thing has been also renamed. We're ProRate.energy, and we also have CLEPenergy.org as websites if you want to, web search or remember that. And all these documents are available. We can point you to this rate case that we've been engaged in the city of New Orleans and all the proceedings that have been happening about that. And we encourage your participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving us the time.
And Myron and Richard, thank you. That was terrific. Much appreciated.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.